Hey everyone again tonight. Look, I just put a video up yesterday or the day before about the new Huawei, well, for me, new Huawei S21 Ultra 5G something or other, which I got to replace my Huawei P30 Pro. Now, the P30 Pro I've had for, since day one that it came out here. And I was looking forward to that phone to replace my Lumia 950, which I'd used for a long time and was happy with, but finally broke. Can't remember. The screen failed. I replaced the screen. Who knows? It's in the drawer here. Prior to that, I had the Lumia 920. I did try the 1020 in between there as well, and before that, the 800. And that's pretty much where the channel started. So there are a few people who follow what I'm doing over the years and may be interested in, how things develop. I don't keep this channel up to date with anything. I try to review something when I get it, or at least give an overview of it. I failed to do so with the P30. I did a sort of a look at the hardware, I think a bit at the software, and then I got bogged down in something else. I did start putting together images that I took in that first week or so, comparing it with the Nokia and also previous phones. And I started to put together a big folder of stuff, and I was making notes, and I was trying to put something together that would be quite extensive, and I just didn't get around to it. I just lost it, all just went out of my head, and I couldn't carry on. And so that just sat on my desktop for years. Someone the other day asked about it. Was I going to follow up with the camera review? I said, well, okay, I'll just do it. I'll just look at the folder. It's still there. I remember half of it. I'll try and remember the rest. I'm just going to click through the folders and the images. So this video is going to take quite a while. I'm not going to edit it, like I said. If you're on your deathbed, don't watch this. If you want to skip through, go for it. Skip through. There may be something interesting later on. Okay, so now about the P30 Pro. Everyone knows, that was the one with the camera at the time. There were a couple coming up competing, the Samsung. Maybe it was the 10. There was also the, the odd Sony. People were waiting for the new Nokia PureView something 9 or something like that. This was with the new company Nokia, the new, the not Nokia, but the new company using Nokia's name and technology and so on. And that came out and was a big disappointment, I thought. I looked at the images and the reviews and comparisons, and that was just a big disappointment, that camera. So I ended up going for the P30 Pro. And just a quick overview of that. The Pro has camera. Rear camera, Leica camera, 40 megapixel wide angle. So that's the standard lens on these phones, 40 megapixel, okay, stabilized, etc. And then it's got a 20 megapixel ultra wide and an 8 megapixel tele. And the point of it all is that the telephoto is a periscope. This was, I think, the first one that had the periscope in it. And you got 5 times optical tele. Now, in my video from a couple of days ago, I kept calling it a 10 times. It's not a 10 times. I was just thinking of the Samsung. I kept saying 10 times. 5 times optical. The Samsung has a 10 times and a 3 times. I pointed out in that video that what I really wanted in this was a 3 times, because the 5 times is just too long for use. And there's also an issue to do with, at a certain distance, it switches to digital. It switches back to the standard sensor and uses digital zoom. And there's this point about a meter or so away from you where it just jumps back and forth, and it's just a pain in the butt. But for portraiture and general landscape, I mean, a 3x on one of these, 3x this, you know, what they call a wide angle lens, that would be quite nice. So, what can I do? Let's go through this. Let's go through these photos. What can I? How can I start this? I've just been having a look at these, and I thought I'll load up Picasa. Might do a demo of Picasa one day because it's a great program. And I got a lot of stuff in here. So if you're into camera, these old cameras, there's some interesting stuff here. In particular, this one here, it's neither the P30 Pro or the Samsung or anything. This is actually the Lumia 1020 and the 808. I brought this in because it was interesting and related to something. We've got here the Lumia 1020. Now with the 1020, what I did there was I was looking forward to that camera coming out after the 920, which I owned and was very happy with. But the 920 had this smear. Again, if you've seen my old videos, you'll know about that smeared area that it had just on the CCD somewhere, just like as if someone had put Vaseline on it. These cameras are like that, sort of in patches all over the place, but my one had a particularly bad oval. It was like the big spot on Jupiter. It looked like that. It was very obvious in every photo. So that was really irritating. I'll point it out somewhere in all of these. We'll see it. And so when the 1020 came along with the fabled, 40 megapixel or 42 megapixel sensor, I think it was 38 or something actually in real pixels, I was keen to get it. There were two issues. One was the speed of it, because it was basically the same phone as the 920, which was not a fast camera. It was slow to use. Not in terms of having the buttons and everything, that was nice, but just the CPU, processor, everything was a bit slow. It'd take a photo and you'd have to wait. And the 1020 was going to be the same, but even more pixels to process. So not a fast camera, but at the time, 40 megapixels was pretty exciting. And Nokia, of course, no, I went and I bought one the day it came out, and I told the lady at the counter, I showed her my 920 shots, and I said, look, if it's like this, then I'm going to bring it back as faulty. I don't want one like this. And she looked at them and went, yeah, okay, of course, because it's terrible. And I took it, went outside, took some photos, and it was like that. And so I went back in and showed them to her, and we decided to try another one because I knew it was variable, and I thought, well, maybe this will be my last chance. I'll get a good one. And she let me have another one. And I went off, I opened that one, took it out, did the photos, same thing. And I just took it back and I thought, I'm not spending all that money just to get these extra megapixels and have 40 megapixels of smear, just smeary stuff. It just wasn't worth it. And otherwise the phone was no better. And so I left it, and they were very good, and they took that back as well. I was impressed, but she could see it. She saw it, and she saw the problem on the phone screen. I just showed it to her on the screen. I said, you see that there? And she said, oh, yeah, that's all smeary. It's like, there you go. That's what it's doing. So, moving right along, right here, and I'm aware that I'm not talking about the P30 Pro, but this is about everything. Now, here's the Lumia 1020 photo. When I was running around town, I bumped into a guy, forgotten his name, Tan or Fan. I don't know if he's still watching these, he might be, but I bumped into a guy who had the Nokia 808, which was their, several years before the 1020, they'd done another 40 megapixel camera that used their old operating system, Symbian or something like that. That's long gone, isn't it? Someone will tell me it isn't. You can run it on the Lumia 950 or something, alongside Windows 11. So I bumped into him, and we met up here at the gardens to do some photos because I was keen to do some comparisons. And so here was a shot we took that I took one, and we stood next to each other, or I took them both. I can't remember. And so this is of interest. This is 40 megapixel images. Okay, so obviously that is the full image. If I go to 1:1, that's 1:1. And let me just get my old man specs here. And it looks pretty good, you know. Nothing wrong with that. Looks pretty good. I'm going to put this video up at 4K. I'm going to render this. If anyone's watching this just after it gets posted, be aware that it can take a day or more for YouTube to actually process the 4K version. And even then, the 4K version is not as good as what I have here. But that's just the way it is. But that looks pretty good. No problem there. Great. Over here, this is the Nokia 808. Now, straight off, you notice how the colors are far less saturated. Far less saturated. But this was done in a time when people expected a phone or a camera, any camera, whether it's in a phone or not, to be made to be accurate, you know, look like natural color. Well, this actually looks like natural color. This does not. This is sort of the, you know, candy color that everyone expects nowadays, and all phones do this. But this is quite natural. And that's good. I think that's very good. Let me just go in there. Now this app here doesn't maintain the zoom as I flip around. So every time I switch back, it'll revert back to this. But that's all right. There isn't much for us to look at in the middle here. You know, there's a little piggy on. The man's shirt with the stripes. Over here, his jacket, his glasses, you know, you can see him pretty well. I mean, you can't read the text on the sign, but you can see that there is text there. And so on. And if we switch to the other one, let's have a look there. Same thing. A little bit less sharpened. I would say. Yeah, not quite as sharpened. So add a bit of sharpening to that. Boost the saturation. You'd have the same image pretty much. Okay, so what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is this. If I go back to the Nokia image and I zoom into 1:1, and we move over to the side here, and look at these bushes. Look at the leaves, the roses up here in this area in particular. See what happens over here. It's really just, now this is the edge of the frame, mind, right? But here we go. See, this turns from people who are visible, you can see them, you can see their heads and their faces and their clothing and their bodies. And then over here, there's still people sitting there, but it's mush. Here you can see a brick column, right? Column with plants. Well, that's one as well, but it's just mush. This bench is also interesting, you know, it looks like that, but no, it doesn't. It looks dreadful. You can see it's all smeared out. It's all, and with an ultra wide, say on a cheap ultra wide or a faulty ultra wide back in the day, you might have this kind of thing towards the corners, or even on a single, like a meniscus lens, a box brownie or something would have this kind of thing going on radially from the center. That is, you know, towards the corners and around the edges, you'd get this kind of thing going on. And it's sort of like that's what it's doing, right? And what we're seeing is about that far in from the edge. It's an unusable image. About 5, 6, 7% of the image on the left edge is garbage. So that wasn't very nice. It's like, well, okay, I'm losing 5 or 6 or 7% of the image right there. If I go to the other side, and again, it looks pretty good. Over here, it's looking, you know, it's a bit of a painterly mess. But again, this bench here, it just loses it halfway along the bench. And you can see way over there, well, again, these brick columns just turn into real garbage. I mean, look at this thing. That's just a mess. It's unusable over there. So again, on that side of the image, and it's actually more. It's more like, well, 6, 7, 8%. But over 10%, I think, of this image, left and right, about 10% in total is unusable. So really the good image is about there, that much. Not that, but that. That's your good image, about there. Other than that, on the outside, left and right, it's pretty good. I don't see any great problem here. Quite like it. But you might say, well, what are you moaning about? You know, it gets crappy towards the edges. So, you know, it's an amazing camera or something. Well, you know, and in fact, even those trees up there look terrible. Whereas in here in the middle, they look pretty good. Top right, absolutely. Just a mess up there. All this stuff, see? I mean, that whole half of the frame there is just garbage. Now, I'll show you what it should look like. So here is the camera that was several years older. It might have been, what, 5 years older? The 808, something like that. Now, let's just have a look at what this one does. Same thing. Let's go over to the corner. There's those people sitting there. There they are. There's a guy playing something. It looks like he's playing a mandolin or something. There are those people. You can see them. Same as the other one. And you can see them, and you can see them, and you can see the bricks here. There are the bricks. Oh, and you can see the bricks all the way to the edge. See there on the far side? You can see the brick column. This bench looks good. All the people, man there with his glasses and everything. Over there, they're looking just as good as over here. Just as good. Exactly as good. And so, if you want to know, well, how good should this be, this Lumia 1020, it should be this good. It should be as good as the 808, and it just is not. And both the 1020s I had looked exactly like this. I'll get onto the P30 Pro in a moment, but this is all part of the background. This is really about these high-res images. I was getting into that at the time because it was a thing. Now on this side, let's zoom in again a bit. All right, everything looks pretty tidy. You know, that's tidy, looks nice. These things look good. This crowd here, they actually look better than on the Lumia. Here's the brickwork. And as we go over, well, you can see that bench over here actually looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. You can even see the bolts there on the seat. That's how good it has to be. Another case in point here, say I'll just go to the corner. See this bottom right hand corner? All that. All this garbage, all that smear. How good should that be? It should be that good. Look how good that is. You can see every blade of grass pretty much. You can almost count the blades of grass around this thing all the way to the corner, the far corner. So that was a massive disappointment with the 1020. Two phones exactly like that. Took them back, left it, kept my 920, put up with the smear for a bit longer, and so on. So for some reason I had these images in this folder because this whole video was going to turn into this long spiel about the cameras I'd had and tested and so on. I think that's very interesting. You don't see this in reviews online as far as I'm aware. I've never seen it. I've seen one or two people talk about the smearing. You know, not reviewers, they never see anything, but people who commenters know it. They see it. So there we go. How great is the 808 apart from the color? Let's get right along to the next thing. I don't know what the segue was I had at the time into the remaining photos, But I then purchased the 950 Lumia, did quite a few photos with that, and some of those are in here. And then I got the P30 Pro. Now the P30 Pro, again, had a 40 megapixel sensor as the standard lens, which is the wide. Then it had a 20 megapixel ultra wide and the 8 megapixel or so tele, 5 times. When I got the camera, I ran out. I did all these shots. I went up the hill here and I started photographing stuff. I did this thing where I stick my phone off the balcony and I clamp it onto the window and I carefully take photos. And I've got a series of photos here from older cameras all the way through to the P30. And today I took photos with the Galaxy, which I will be doing in the next video, which is just going to be between the P30 and the Galaxy, not all this other stuff. Right, moving right along. Things of interest here about the P30. I guess the zoom, that's one of the key features. Certainly at the time it was unique, that periscope lens. Some of these photos here, like this here, that's the ultra wide. Like that, crooked shot. So that's the ultra wide. That's the standard. I call it a standard, but it's the normal wide that you have on a phone. So ultra wide, quite a long way out. Go to the standard, cuts into there. Just get the harbor, and then we go to, this is the 5 times. That's another of the 5 times. That's probably the better one, which is pretty cool, isn't it? From the ultra wide all the way into that bit there. That's what we're going to see. That's what we're seeing. And instead of that, you get that. No, that. Pretty good, isn't it? I mean, great. Look, you can read what's on these things. Again, everything has that painterly effect, but at the 5 times, it's good. Now, this is the sort of the equivalent of a 135 tele, which, you know, it was a popular lens, the 135, but it was always too short for sports, you know, too short for sitting in the stands, too long for taking photos in the garden, you know, around the house of portraits or something. It was a difficult lens, a 135, but that's what this one is like. So nice, though. I mean, it does what it says it's going to do. And there we go. Here we went up to, oh, that's the same again at 135, but for some reason it's all smeary, and this sort of becomes a problem. Now here we've gone up to 10 times, so you just tap on the 10 times, and it digitally zooms, and does all its stabilization magic, and it digitally zooms in. So that's the 10 times. Now that's interesting because the the new Samsung has 10 times optical and looks good. You know, it looks very good. And so, you know, if you're just going to have a small photo like that size, even that's pretty good. It works. You see this van down here. I mean, the amazing thing with that little van is just where it was. Where was it? It's there. It's there. You know. There it is, right there. That's the van. Yes. So that's quite impressive, isn't it? I think that's quite impressive. We get down to the van. There it is. Get a bit closer. That gadget there, that Hot Wheels thing there, that's way up. That's the maximum zoom. I forget what it is. 30 or 50 times or something like that. That's the maximum. Really, it's no different than taking this one and zooming in like that. That's all it does. So that's that. And there it is. It's not even as good looking right there. There's the van at maximum, or one of the vans, the other one. There were two down there. I've got other examples here of the telly. I'll just put in a folder. Okay, so this kind of thing's quite fun. That's just at the 5x optical. It was a foggy day in town, so I went up on top of the hill. Let the camera focus here on these rushes or these reeds and the bird, and the city behind just has the fog all over it. Worked well for that. I like that. You know, I thought that's quite effective, and that was a reasonable distance off the road there. What else we got? Problems. I'll show you the problems with the telly in a moment. There's quite a few. Just see if there's any more shots here of interest with the telly. No. Okay. Oh, the moon. Of course, you got to have the moon shot. Now, everyone who got one of these went out and shot the moon. I think it was. Can't remember what the factor was, but the focal length, the equivalent 35mm focal length, was 1,343. So 1.3 meter focal length. That's a lens that long, and in your little phone. Of course, it's just digitally zooming in there, but that's what you could get. It was quite impressive. It was so impressive that people thought that Samsung was just detecting that it was the moon, or who was it? Huawei was detecting that it was a moon, and then inserting a ready-made moon image into it. Because you could see the craters, it's blurry, but you can see stuff. It's quite impressive. Newton would have been very happy, or any of those guys would have been very. Galileo, he would have been like, whoa. And but if you sharpen it up a tiny bit, like that, that's the same image, just on the phone. You just go edit, and it's all changed now, but at the time you just go edit, and then click the sharpen button, and then boom, it was like that. Very effective sharpening, because you really then can see what's going on. But it's sharpening so much you get a pattern, you see, like that. Pretty impressive. I mean, it was fun. But you do it once and then you never do it again, because it's not that good. It's not good enough to replace an actual telescope or something. So that's of interest. What else did I do? I'll show you those other things in regards to the comparison across the three lenses, because there are some interesting things there. I'll show you the problem with the telly. I'm still focusing on the telly now, because that's the most problematic of the lenses. Now, this is what happens. I mentioned that early on in the video. I said the telly, tellies don't focus as close, because you have to get the lens further and further away from the film or the CCD to focus closer and closer, and it's too far. It becomes too far. There isn't enough room in the case. And so most tellies that you have for your camera, as you go closer and closer, well, I guess if you're used to digital cameras and macro zooms, you won't notice it'll just switch into a macro mode or something and do funny things with the zoom elements. But if you have a proper prime lens that has to move further away to focus closer, it's so far away, so that often the old 135 lenses would stop at, say, 6 feet. And that would be the closest focal distance, which was pretty, you couldn't even photograph your own feet with a lens like that. And so the phone actually has the same issue, the long lens, the optical one, because it's optical, has the same problem. And so what it does is, when it gets to a certain distance, it'll switch to the standard lens and then digitally zoom in to the same amount, which is just crap. It's crap. And it would be fine if it just would tell you that it was doing it, but you don't know that it's doing it unless you're looking carefully at the screen and you go, oh, it's all funny looking, it's that blurry, it's gone to the digital. And whenever I'm using this one, I'm constantly doing that and going, it's not focusing. It's gone to the digital. How can I get it out of that? Get it back to the other? And I'm moving around, and it's a nightmare. So typical thing, what happens? Like you might take some berries there, and I'm getting a bit of bouquet against that grass and the light in the background. And that was the next shot, but the first shot is like this. You see, that's the digital garbage. This is the standard lens zoomed in. That's the actual optical 5 times. You can see the berries are sharp, right? Very, very sharp-ish. But if we go to this one and do the same thing, it's garbage. And you have to watch for that, because the phone doesn't just say, hey, stop, this is it, it should change to another lens or get further away. It just goes plonk, plonk, plonk and makes a mess of things. Really irritating. Ruined many, many shots with that. I think some of these were examples. So yes, photo of leaves on the ground, one shot, next shot. Same time, same place, just move a little bit. Tiny bit. I was like right on that cusp of when it switches. And again, I couldn't see it. I got these, I didn't see this until I examined them for this video at the time. I was like, oh, well, there we go. That's what's happening there. Same stuff. Pretty nice and sharp there, There. Ugh. No. Not very good. Same again. I'm trying to take nice photos of my dash here. A beautifully restored dash, and this keeps happening. Same thing. See, all the numbers turned to junk. Everything's gone all digital, and yet that's the actual optical lens right there. Everything's nice and sharp. Looks beautiful. I mean, it's great when it works. Here again, went all digital. It's terrible. Here again at the drags. See, it would happen also when you're taking photos of things that are further away. Now, why? Maybe it's looking here at the hats. It shouldn't be. And I tell you what, whenever I see it, I'm tapping on the screen, like on that car, saying, focus on the damn car. That damn car. But this is what happens. Happens a lot. There's more of that. I think there were some videos. I'll show you the videos that have the same issue. I don't know how long this has been going on. Half an hour. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep going. Tele to blah, blah, blah. So, for example, these might make noise. Okay. You see that? I'll take the camera up, get ready, shoot, and there you go. That's what it looks like. Why? There's nothing else in the frame, right? I don't know if there's some kid standing in front of me going, hey, you try to upset my camera. But it should be focusing using contrast off the CCD. It's not focusing by measuring the distance to that. And then, boom, switches to optical. Garbage, and there's the crossover. Garbage, good. And it flips into a different area even. I don't know why, but that's just an alignment thing. So that's another typical example of that. Just doing shots in general. This is where it's like it's so close. It's too close because I'm standing on the side there and it's too close. And where it's like a 2 or 3 times would be much more useful. The focus hunts a lot, does that a lot. So it's going all over the place. It doesn't know where to focus. And yes, I touch on the screen where I want it to focus. And then it does that. So you wait, right? It does this. You stand there, you're holding your camera up, you feel like an idiot. Yeah, don't worry, they'll take off soon. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Oh, so now it's out of focus. What the hell? Oh, and it's, oh, what are you doing? And again, it's looking at something else. And it shouldn't. Happens all the time. So that's frustrating, and I give the sort of, you know, the whole thing gets a negative for that. I'm not going to score these things, but not very good. Not very good. This. Same thing. See? I'm at the airport. I'm not in the car. This is not inside the car. It's not going through the glass, right? There's always some smart aleck trying to go, oh, you're probably doing it through the glass. No. I'm standing outside. I'm going like that. I'm just going, hey, I'll try using the long zoom here to take a photo, do some footage of a plane landing, just for fun. And it's doing the digital garbage straight off the bat. It's not because the thing is 6 feet away. It's a long way away. There's no people here. It's a car park. There's nothing there. Nothing there. And it just mucks around, and then eventually comes right. And even as it comes right, the focus goes in and out and in and out and in and out. It just sort of goes nyeh, 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 nyeh. So even when it switches to the right lens, it's still still not very good. It's good when it works. It doesn't work. I mean, half the time it doesn't work. So I really don't use it anymore. Let's get on to the next things of interest. Now, I'm still working on faults here. At the end, I'll show some photos. I'll just go through some photos that I think look good and why it's good as well. Because, you know, I'm perfectly happy with the camera in the end. I would have been happy to keep it if I hadn't broken it. And but there are other problems here. This is one. So I will take photos, and then this will happen. Like, there's a photo, and that's the standard lens, the standard wide. And you can see the bike's a bit burnt out a little bit on the panels, and you can sort of see most stuff. You can see the shade, you can see the background, you can see the foreground. You know, there's a reasonable range of tones. It's quite contrasty, but there's a reasonable range of tones. Switch to the wide, the ultra wide, and this happens. And I've moved around slightly. And so, again, the smart aleck's going to say, oh, but the light's shining off that side panel. It's making the aperture, which it doesn't have, closed down. Okay, or the shutter speed up, and it's doing that. In fact, I wonder if I can see the shutter speed here. Hold on. Oh, give me the shutter. No. No shutter speed. There's everything there but a shutter speed. Doesn't really matter. But the point is, you see, you can see that, right? But what's happened out here? Why has that gone completely black? And over here on the right, and over there, it's gone completely black almost. You see back there, look how black that is. Even if it's gone down a stop or so. And I started looking at this going, what's going on here? I mean, if I was going to bring up the exposure to where we could see the wheels, you know, we could see these things on the outside, this would be completely blown out. It's already blown out. Already blown out, that side cover. There it is. So I was trying to investigate that problem. Here again, the issue here. Okay, this was doing it as well. Okay, one shot, same lens. This isn't even two different lenses. This is the ultra wide, 2.3 millimeters. Ultra wide as well, 2.3 millimeters. What's going on there? One shot, These are seconds apart, these photos. Well, maybe not seconds because that ship managed to get from there to there, but it's pretty close. 1.5 minutes apart. It's a fast ship. 1.5 minutes from there to there, okay? And what's going on? Why is this one so incredibly contrasty? And you can see it's centered in the middle, like it's dark around the edge. Look at the sky up here. See how it goes? Oh, that's the same sky there. Look what happens to it over here. You see over there, it's the same sky. It's the same sky all the way across the frame. At that altitude, it's the same as it would be. And further up, as you go higher, the gradation is the same across the frame. Here, whoa, severe vignetting. That's vignetting. That's like a pinhole camera. Or an ultra-wide that has no corrections. But these things are supposed to correct for this. And so again, I'm trying to figure this out. Kept happening. See, these are, again, that same type of issue. And also happened, say, that's done with the standard wide. And again, you can see the background back here. All that. Those trees, they look fine. All this looks fine. The ground looks fine. Everything looks fine. And then we switch to the ultra wide, and wham, black. Black. Much more than is accounted for by the difference in exposure, because this is because it's taking in a bit more. The automatic is making it a bit darker, but that's just crazy what's happening there. Anyhow, I figured it out. So this series of images here, I had to rack my brains to remember what I'd done here. I went out, photographed a wall outside my house, and went through different settings. The settings aren't visible in the EXIF data, but I remembered what I'd done. So 1, 2, 3, same camera, same camera. This is standard wide. There, there, and there. The difference between them is the color mode. So the Huawei, the phone camera has this button there, little button there, and when you tapped it, it would give you, natural color, soft color or something, and strong color. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was like 3 different settings. And that's what these are. On the standard lens, that was normal, that was what the next, and that was the next. You can see that how flat that one is, the color. It's even all the way across the frame. And then we go to that one. All of a sudden, the corners are darkening. You see top left, right, bottom left. It's darkening a little bit. And that's the same, darkening again. Darkening about the same there for that one. And if we go to the next image, there, this is the ultra wide. Looks fine, doesn't it? It's very even across the whole frame. Very even. In fact, so even that you just know that's digital processing that they've put in this to compensate for the light fall off, everything. So it looks great. Look at that. And that. These are the 2 other settings. That's the flat color, that's the stronger one, and that's the 3rd level. They must have forgotten to do it or something. They probably forgot to apply the compensation algorithms to these settings, because that's what's going on. In fact, this is what a lens like this would look like if it had no correction. I mean, in the old days when you had an ultra-wide, you'd often have a, if it wasn't a symmetrical lens, huge multi-element thing, you'd have the filter, the neutral density graduated from the center outwards, so it was dark in the middle and it got lighter towards the edge. If you ever buy a Linhof Technorama panoramic camera, make sure you get the filter, because it flattens it out and it makes that look like that. That's what it does. So that's the problem. Anytime I used a saturated setting, or the medium setting, whatever it was, because it looked a little bit better. You want that. You don't want that Nokia N808 look. You want a little bit more Lumia 1020 these days. Otherwise, people think your photos just look flat. And you do that on the ultra wide. This was the result. And these ones here at the end, these last three, of course, this is the 5x optical, flat, stronger color, and the stronger color. The tint just changes because of whatever they've done to it. And that one's fine. So there we go. That was that mystery solved. Faulty software. And so all these ones that have this look, that's what's going on. So what happened was I couldn't use, I'd have to not use the ultra wide or switch off the color in ultra wide and think to do that. Just another thing that's just a bit of a fail. It's like, just like the tele lens, it's got so many glitches that you just can't rely on it. That was the problem. Moving right along. Now, what other things were of interest? Now, I've got some comparisons with cameras going quite far back, which may be of interest. One of the standard places I go, I shoot photos off the balcony out the back, over my messy neighbors' yards, but I get the houses in backdrop, and it's quite nice. And I also take photos off the where the cable car is, where I get the city in the background like that. And I do that. I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to show you one more problem with the telephoto I just spotted. Okay. This one I put in a folder called double image. So this is the 5x at 5x optical. So that's no digital zoom or anything, and it looks good. That's pretty good because that's off the back of the house, and it's there. That house there in the middle. See, it's up there. So this is the standard wide. Nope, that's the it's a different camera, so it's not telling me. That's the standard wide, I think. And that there is the 5x optical on the Huawei. Now, of interest here is this house looks good. This one here. I'm very pleased with that because for once we get an image where the bricks are actually bricks. They're almost cartoon bricks, they look like bricks. Very often in these images you get moire patterns, and they turn into ovals, and they turn into diamonds and all kinds of funny shapes because the CCDs just can't render them properly. So that's pretty good. All of these lines here, these corrugated, all looks very good. Even over here in the corner, good detail. But up here, these houses, look at these ones. Not good. And it sort of varies. Whilst this house stays intact, the color changes slightly. This is seconds apart again. The color changes because the sun is behind clouds and coming out and popping in and out. But I'm locked onto to the windowsill. The cameras are dead solid, and all I'm doing is just going. There's no movement in me. But there seems to be movement in the camera. And the Lumia also did this. Some of you who have been around for a while may recall the 920 Lumia was like the first one with the optical stabilization, which was like, wow. And then you had all the reviewers walking around going, woo. But what it was meant to do is not deal with shake and stuff like that. It's not a gimbal. It's stabilization. It's meant to deal with, just your jiggly hand, just the little bit of jiggle that you might introduce when you're holding something steady. You're trying to hold it steady. It deals with that. But it didn't. It was terrible. if you've seen old footage, the edges of the frame would seesaw in and out. So the center would be good, but the edges would be jiggling around like that. And it was like it's like it had an element in the lens that was just mounted in springs. And it, like, as if it used the mass of the lens to try and, if you jiggled one way a little tiny bit, that middle lens would just stay on the spot. But on the outside, it would do this seesaw effect. It was terrible. Made it quite useless, actually. And you couldn't turn it off because it was, it was real mechanical thing. It wasn't digital. Now that appeared, in my opinion, appeared to introduce funny little wavy effects and things in the image, because these images are captured. I think the images they're not captured at once, which is why you'll get movement. If something's moving, it'll be on an angle and stuff like that across the frame. But certainly areas are captured differently, and I think that movement in the lens would introduce double images in some places. You'd get a doubling up, and that's what's happening here, is you have this doubling up, whilst the house here is certainly not doubled up and looks very good, nor is this over here. That looks excellent. You see, all this is, it's soft, but there's only one image, and then you get up here, and all of a sudden, you've got two images. See, that house, it's there twice. That's what's going on. That's why it looks like that. See the gable there? It's there twice. This guttering is there twice. But over here again, it's all right again. And that looks fine. It's not sharp, but it's fine. And in fact, all the way over on the right, it looks fine. Now the second image is funny because it looks different. So there's one. In the second image, this house here is singular. It's clearly a single image of that house. You look at the guttering up here. Whereas in the other one, in this image, it's doubled. It's like it's got the movement during the exposure, and it's in there doubled up. That's what's happened. And this happens, that house there is a mess. That one up there is just a mess. That whole railing there, you can see those crosses. That's a single railing. That's just a cross like that. And yet it's all moved all over the place. The house actually visibly looks like you've stepped on your tripod and sort of made the lens go up during the exposure. Well, the lens has not gone up during the exposure because it's perfect over here. So something else is doing that. Exactly what? I don't know. I think it's the optical stabilization that's doing that. That ruins quite a few images as well. It's not the worst thing, but it's not great. Once you see it, it's like, eh. I think I took images here. Here I was just trying to bring out the natural bokeh, not the digital bokeh. Most of these are shot in Pro mode, not in the photo mode, because the photo mode just stuffs with the images too much. But the Pro mode, it just does. It takes the photo according to your settings. And so I was just trying out, let's throw the background out of focus and see how it looks. Okay, and I thought, okay, that's all right. And then it's like, so here, obviously the bike is sharp, right? And the background is out of focus. Fairly evenly out of focus. Reasonably evenly. It's not great bokeh. It's not like a real camera, but it's out of focus, as it should be. Here, I then switched to put the background in focus, right? So I've tapped. I used my finger. I tap on the bike, and then I tap on the background, and I take it again. So tap on the background and let it settle, and then take the photo. And now here the bike is out of focus, obviously, and the background is coming into focus. This first tree isn't, but the second one is. And from there on up, it's in focus. It's soft because it's what it is, but it's in focus until you get part way up here, and then this whole area here is doubled up. Basically a big splodge here is jerked. It's doubled. And again, I think it's the optical stabilization. It's just doing something, going screwing up. And in the background there, it's fine again. Hasn't got that problem. But all these buildings and houses here have a doubling. They're all twice as, there's two roofs. There's two roof lines. All these lines here, you can see them doubled up right there. That's two roof lines, two of everything, just on top of each other like that. I won't go on about that any further. You can see the problem. Not so great. Other issues. Bokeh. So now this is digital bokeh, which it does. So you're sitting there and I'm just letting it, you know, I put my finger on the wall down here and let it throw the background out of focus. Quite good. Quite nice. When it's a simple thing like that, it works pretty well. Here I was trying something a little bit harder. And obviously I wanted the house there to be in focus and this tree to not be in focus. And so I'm tapping on the house and it puts the tree out of focus, but it's also trying, now this is in the photo mode, not the pro mode. So it does the bokeh in the photo mode. Pro mode doesn't do it. So what happened here though is the camera didn't know what to throw out of focus. So this tree was out of focus anyway, optically out of focus. But everything in the background here was far enough away to have actually been in focus. And yet the camera just didn't know. It doesn't know how far things away are, how far away things are, and it's just all of that's been thrown out of focus. But then all of a sudden in here it's sort of leaving something in focus. Part of that house is in focus, then that isn't. You know, the balcony is, but then the gable here is not, and then that part is not, but then this part of the tree is, and there's these weird things going on. It's just in and out of focus all over the place. It was just a mess, really. So that's just showing, you know, that the digital focus, you can confuse it very easily. It's just for simple subjects, and it works quite well. Here you can see it doesn't really know what the edge of the tree is. It's trying to find the edge and it goes out there and whatever. It thinks that there is part of the tree. You see it's going down and it thinks, oh, if you ever play with Photoshop and you use a magnetic lasso, that's what it's doing. It's going around looking for the edge, trying to detect the edge and then put something out of focus on one side of the line and not out of focus on the other. Same thing here. You can see what it's doing. You know, so it's like, oh yeah, there's the background's out of focus. Looks a bit funny though. Easy to fool. Now here, you can see where the line that it's trying to draw around the outside of these plants. I mean, there's no way. That's a hard select in Photoshop, that is too. A very hard select. And you can see sort of some bits through there are left as focused, but then other bits, it even gets rid of part of that little twig there. Bit of a mess. It doesn't know where to start and where to stop. So like here, that's out of focus, that's in focus, and oof. Interesting though, just so you can see what it does. Yeah. Not really a usable image though. But there, you know, much simpler, and that works. It's a bit washed out, but pretty much worked. Pretty much. Here, oh, this was supposed to be the telly, but it ended up doing the digital thing. That's what it was doing. That's right. Here's out of focus highlights, right? Because when you want to find out what your bokeh is going to look like, you just want to take sparkles, out of focus highlights, throw it out of focus, and then you can see what the shape is of the aperture. And it's got a good shape. It's round. In whatever lens this was, that's the standard lens. It's round. Yeah, that's the Huawei standard lens right there. And so you can see the out of focus highlights are actually round and very nice for that lens. Here's what the photo mode does when it's doing what it's meant to do. And this is the kind of photo you see in the ads. And the reviewers who do this, you know, they always do a photo of themselves standing there, and then that's it. So, but this is just a snapshot, just snap, and then it's good. You can see where the hair, it's trying to find a spot there. This was early, so it's, you know, the phones are better at this now, but pretty good. Pretty good, quite effective. You know, it's really throwing it so far out of focus. It's not even natural like a. In fact, that's the funny thing is that's a wide-angle lens. It's what is it, 27 millimeter equivalent lens on a 35 mil camera, and yet it's thrown it out of focus as if it were a 100 mil lens. You know, that sort of thing. Shot wide open. You know, f2 or something. That's sort of what it looks like. But it's effective. I mean, look how far that boat is out of focus. Very far out of focus. Quite nice. When it works, it's nice. It actually is quite neat. So I don't object to that. I've forgotten a lot of this, so I'm not going to go into it. I will show some variations here. This is the, well, this is the Lumia 950. Now, the Lumia 950 had a great camera, but it was not an appealing camera to people who wanted Instagram images with everything saturated and colored and contrasting and whatever. What it had was a camera that was like a real camera. Images were flat, nothing weird going on in the corners. It was a massive improvement over the 920 and the earlier cameras. Really good. Not a very exciting look to the images, but they were like a film camera. So you can see the colors are sort of flat, really natural looking, really natural. And overall, just the same amount of sharpness everywhere. There weren't smears like in the earlier cameras. You know, everything's pretty sharp. Probably the nearest, like an iPhone. They tend to take photos like this. Quite a straight photo, pretty flawless photo. And so the Lumia 950 did that. But then you go out and you put the Lumia 950 in your pocket and you pull out the P30 Pro and you take the same photo. And that looks like that. It's not exactly the same. I'm just moving a little bit because I was taking lots of photos. But it does that. And it's like, what the hell is it doing? This is in the photo mode, right? I was just letting the camera do what it wants to do. And it does that. And it turns the background, super saturates it all. Very high contrast here. Look at that rear wheel. Just completely black, really. All black there. And this red, the pine needles looking red here. And the tree very dark. And in particular, there's an issue here which is quite common. You'll see this in a lot of these images. See here on the silver, on the alloy of the engine, it's got all these funny colors, the rainbow colors. It's not Pride Month, but it's rainbow all over the place, just everywhere, all over the place, just covered with these funny colors in the seat, and even up here. It's those red areas, red bits that you can see all over the place. All around the discs. Yeah, that's quite, this becomes really common on this Huawei. This phone had no such issues. You see? Color is dead even. Good, all the way across the frame. There's no issues in terms of color. So that's the Lumia 950 again. You might get a bit of purple fringing, but that's a different thing. Those weird red and colored spots that are just splotched all over the place. God knows what's doing that. Don't know if that's the processing or an issue with the CCD or who knows. And then, so that's the Huawei standard. Same shot, just take a photo. But the thing is, it looks good as well. And in fact, that looks sort of a little bit better. If you were going to stick it on Instagram, you wouldn't put that on. You'd probably put that on. That's why I don't use Instagram, because I don't. And then if I switch to the wide angle, the ultra wide, that did this. You know, same place, same time, switch, just tap another button on your camera to the ultra wide. I'm not taking another phone out of my pocket. It's the same camera, same phone. And it's completely different again. Super saturated. I mean, look at the grass back there. Green as. But then this here is no longer red at all. But back there it is. And the bike, super contrasty. Super, super contrasty. Completely different image again. That's the point I'm making. 1, 2, 3. That's the Lumia again. So, you know, at this point, these were a couple of years ago or more. At this point, I was starting to think the camera, it was a real hit or miss affair. I'd take a photo and I'd go, well, is this going to be any good? And what I started doing was, I'll shoot some here and then I'll shoot some there. Maybe I'll switch to pro mode and shoot some, because I didn't know what was going to be good. And yeah, I took that as a negative as well. It was just inconsistent, really inconsistent. And at the time I was hoping, well, maybe updates, they'll start fixing things. They certainly changed stuff. The camera's different now, but I've stopped looking at these issues. I didn't do a lot of arty kinds of shots with this P30. With the old Lumias, I was trying to take good photos. I found with the P30, I was happy if I got good snapshots. I certainly liked having the ultra-wide. The tele, not so much. The standard was pretty good. I liked having the higher resolution, but I'll get on to a point about that. And here again, standard. This is the Huawei standard wide. Very warm looking. Very nice. I mean, it's beautiful, I think. It looks very nice. So, you know, it's the Instagram shot. But then there's the wide. Same location, same time, switch to the wide. Does that. It sort of looks interesting, but no, it's not very good. And the fact that it's that different is pretty crappy. What else we got? What else we got? This is just an example quickly of the three different lenses. Standard, and it's got this almost HDR kind of look where the dark tones are all lifted up quite strongly. See the tires, instead of being black, they're sort of gray. Here's the ultra wide. You can see from the distortion, now all of a sudden the tires look more natural black, instead of this HDR black, natural black. But the distortion's no good. The bike looks good there, doesn't look good there. And then the third shot is the 5 times, and you have to go so far back to do the 5 times, and you can see how the actual perspective, in my opinion, doesn't look good. It doesn't look that great, and the color is just off. It's not nice. Doesn't look very sharp either. Found it hard to use, that camera. I can't remember what the deal was with that. Here's another 3 shots of interest. That's the ultra wide, and it has that HDR look to it. Maybe the camera did HDR, I don't know, but it has that look to it. The blacks are not there. See, the tires are lifted up in tone to where they actually look very, you know, they're not black like a black tire. Everything's visible. HDR. That's that effect that it does. But if you didn't see a different photo, you might go, oh, well, that looks good. And then that photo, you see, from that to that, this one here is this is the standard. This is the standard wide. And I think it's more appealing. It's got a smooth, warm look, but it's too warm. It's like those other one. Again, this is the Instagram shot. So I find that the ultra wide doesn't take a nice photo. But here I haven't got the saturated color thing on because of that terrible vignette. So that's off and it's actually flat. So it looks good in that regard. It's got good lighting, but it's weird color. It's sort of HDR looking. And I didn't use HDR. I didn't have that on because I want an image to be normal. So here, this is the sort of the Instagram lens. Let's call the standard lens the Instagram lens because it is. It looks like that. Nice looking. I like the way this looks. Quite nice. And then here, this is the 40 megapixel standard. So the standard can go from 10 megapixel to the advertised 40 megapixel. And I haven't brought that up yet, but that's this image. So here's the standard, 10 megapixel. Here's the standard, 40. You can see it becomes greener. On my screen, those gold wheels in particular, they go from sort of a reddish gold to a more green gold. And even this foreground here goes from quite warm to green. Not even cold, it just goes green. There's a green hue, a green cast over the whole thing. That's the same camera lens going to the 40 megapixel CCD, which as far as I'm aware is the same CCD as the 10. But in the 10, it's, super sampling those pixels to create new super pixels and giving you 10 megapixels of them. That's what it's doing. Obviously the 40, so here's one-to-one of the, that's one-to-one of the 10 megapixel image. Fills the frame now, the bike fills the frame there. And if we do the same on the, now we'll go one-to-one on the 40 megapixel. This is how many pixels are available. And that's that. It's not really sharp as such, and it's not sharpened. It would perk up a bit if I sharpened it, but it tends to look like that. It's pretty good, but it's got this thing going on. I'll just show you how it's good. So the reason it is good is here. Well, you can see the bevels in there through the little bevel tower there. You can see the bevel gears, those. And that nut, the lock nut. If we go to and look at the overall sharpness of this piece here, then we go to this one. Definitely sharper. Definitely sharper. Slightly better tones in there. So it's a step up. It's a step up. You're getting your, it's not 4 times better. But then again, the super sampling of the 40 down to the 10 was meant to make the 10 megapixel images better than a native 10 megapixel camera would be. So that's perhaps why this is as good as it is. But overall, again, the ultra wide, not so great. The standard, very warm and Instagrammy, but generally appealing. And the 40 megapixel, you get the extra pixels, definitely. It's not really any sharper for it, a little bit. See, over here it's like, what's it doing? It's doing a bit of a Lumia thing where it's, doing weird smeary stuff over there. Just behind there, I don't know why. But the worst thing about this lens is all this. See all the little red crap all over the nuts and bolts? Here, little splotches, red splotches everywhere. Up here on the bevel tower, there, splotch, 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 all over the place. None of that's there. None of that's there. These little red marks everywhere, all the way around there, all over the carb. And they're just everywhere, even on the grass background there. all over the side of the body here. They're all over the place. It's covered with this. It's got like measles or something. That's not what it looks like. It's actually clear. Like here's the 10 megapixel. And apart from purple fringing on a highlight, it hasn't got that. It's not there. Same sensor, same lens. But it's warm. It's a very warm image. So that's just another thing I want to point out because I'm so picky. What else can we look at? I'll do comparisons about zooming in on another video. I'll just quickly look at these. These are... That was not a test shot. It was taken because there was a rainbow. But that's the only shot I have with the Lumia 800. That's the 800 off the balcony in the back here. And it's obviously dusky, quite noisy. That's the maximum size there. Lots of color noise. You can see it was a really warm sunset. And there's not a lot to see because it's a pretty low res. 32 by 24, a 1.4 megabyte image. But it was a nice camera. At the time, it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. I didn't have anything better, so it seemed good. Overall, the images are quite nice. There was no smearing or anything. It was quite a good image. It's not sharp enough to see anything like the bricks or anything like that. That little cross I look at, the balconies there, it's just not there. I also look at the corrugated here on the roofing. You can sort of see a bit of it there. Lots of color noise, like I said. But for snapshots at that size or less, yeah, fine. That's the Lumia 800. This is the Lumia 920. Now, this is the one that developed the smear on the right side. It's not really obvious now. It's something that got worse over time. And this camera, and we zoom into that house. No real brickwork. All we can see here is that, in fact, the brickwork is looking like that, like diamond shaped or crossed on an angle, which is just the effect of the pixels against the bricks, and it's just doing that. You get that kind of pattern. There's a bit of pattern here with the corrugated. You know, in terms of the sharpness overall, it was a step up from the 800. There was more information in the picture. That was it. The color is quite cold here. As you can see, the house, it's a red brick house. It's not looking very red brick though, is it? But that's what it is. It's a red brick house. I think the issues in these images I started to notice were that this is when I started to notice smearing on the edges. I remember looking at these and going, God, what is all that? This chimney here, one day I saw, and it was just smudged out quite badly. But this is okay overall, this image. This is the 1020. This is the 40 megapixel 1020. And this is the 40 megapixel image, 11 megabytes in size, 11.4 megs. And it's got that saturation going on like we saw in the garden shot against the 808. And certainly a lot more appealing than the 920 default. But that's processing. That's not the camera. It's the software doing that. Nice, though. This house there, the corrugations, all that stuff, and the bricks, we'll check, even at this size, looks so much better. It's probably not going to come across on YouTube. But I'll zoom in there a bit. That's the maximum zoom at 1:1. But here, boom, look at that. How great is that? It's all there. This corrugated here is there. That corrugated, there it's there. The corrugated going this way on that part is not there. You see down this angle roof, it's not visible. You can't see the corrugations. but you can see them on that side. You can't see them on that roof, but you can see them on that roof. These are things I look at over time, and I go, oh yes, I can see them, I can't. And the brickwork actually takes on the shape of bricks. You know. And look at how nice this railing is up here. We saw that earlier on in those the P30 or whatever the photos we were looking at earlier when this was all doubled up, remember? In the telephoto shot, that was a telephoto shot. This isn't a telephoto shot. This is just the standard wide, and I'm zoomed in to that tele level, and it looks way better than the P30's optical lens. That's an interesting thing. The P30 had this house looking much better because it's 5 times optical compared with this. But up here, these houses, yeah, they were worse. They were actually worse, just because of all the funny shake and the doubling up of everything. So that's a pretty cool, pretty nice image. That chimney's looking really good and quite sharp. I like it. So in this case, the 1020 performed well. It was when I went up to the gardens. Oof, no. Terrible. And could have been something like the 1020 had that same optical stabilization as the 920 with that weird seesaw effect. It's quite possible that that's what was causing the edges to smear out so badly in the gardens, because up there I was holding the camera. I was holding it very, very carefully, going, like this, and then go, and then take the photo using the screen. And possibly that little bit of jiggling, the way that camera does it mechanically, may have caused that problem. I'm starting to block up here, I'm afraid. Sorry. So moving right along, this is now interesting because I went from the Lumia 1020 40 megapixel, looking pretty good, to the P30 Pro 40 megapixel. This, the P30 Pro was heralded as the best phone camera, right? That's why I've got it. Well, here it is. Same shot. Hasn't got that saturation look, so it's not actually as appealing in this particular instance, but I could have boosted the color with that saturation button. I only started using that a little bit later. Initially, I just used it flat, and so that's what it's doing here. It's flat, which is fine. Hey, dude. Who's that? Oh, look at him vaping down there. How disgusting. Oh, and she's smoking. Even more disgusting. Stop smoking. Sorry, I am blocking up. How long is this? Hour and 22 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to cut this up or not. Maybe put it up as 2 or 3 bits. Who knows? Don't really care. I'll just get it up. If you're still watching, you're doing well. On with it. This is the P30 Pro 40 megapixel. It's a little bit smaller, 9.6 megs, because I think it's a mega, like a megapixel less or so than the 1020. Now let's zoom in. Look what's happened to this house. The bricks. Look at that. They've turned into sort of a mosaic where they're going all over the place like a maze. It's actually like a maze or a crossword puzzle there on the side. There's nothing to see on the roof. There's a little bit to see here. You can see that. You can see that. Certainly nothing there. But the worst bit is that house. Now this is the CCD, the processing, everything messing it up. And of interest is these gray lines without the color. And if you look, you can see they're actually going across in a pattern across the brickwork. There's a line at that level, then a line a bit further down, and they're going on an angle, and then down further and down, and so on, all the way down that brickwork. These are the kind of things that happen when you're processing an image with algorithms, rather than just letting the CCD do its thing, and then just adjusting the colors from the raw image. Just do the colors and the gain or whatever to make this near natural as possible, Instead, you're doing a whole lot of other stuff to try and smooth out colors and compress the image and all kinds of stuff like that. And so this is some problem. And it shows itself like this. It's interesting. However, it's a 40 megapixel image. I mean, it's pretty crappy, that. Let's go in a bit further. There were some other things. It's pretty good at a size like this. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. We're not getting the double image up top there. We're not seeing the railing, but it's there. It's okay. That little bit looks good. This little thing I always look at. That looks very, very good. The cabbage trees there are okay. Oops, I just favorited it. But there you go. So that was the P30. P30 Pro, 40 megapixel. Not better than the 1020. But perhaps that stabilization thing is not an issue in the P30 Pro. Moving on to the other P30 Pro. This is the super wide on the P30 Pro. This happens a lot. See the finger in the image top left there? On the ultra wide, that happens all the damn time. Because the ultra wide is this lens on the outside. And you just, even doing that, you're going to get your finger in there like that. It's so wide and so far in the corner that you really have to stay away from that edge altogether. I got lots of images with my finger in the corner there. I mean, see here, I clamp it on the side of the window, and here you can see on the right, that's actually the side of the house, the building. It's hard to keep everything out of the picture. It's so wide. It was quite fun having a lens that wide. But super contrasty. Clouds are magenta. Things are not looking that great. These are... I can't remember what. It's 5,000 by 3,800 pixels. Whatever that is. It looks terrible when you go in. It's pretty awful looking, but it's even. There's a lot of sharpening going on, a lot of sharpening. Looks pretty awful, but if you zoom out and just make it a small shot like you're having on a, something that big or on a website, yeah, you get a lot of stuff in there, and that was fun. The super wides were quite neat as an addition to cameras at that point. Here we have the 950. This is the Lumia 950 XL that I had. Now this had a 19 megapixel, I think it was, standard wide, just one lens, and it was 19 megapixels, so it was like the step up from the 920, not as far up as the 1020, but it was a different camera. It was overall better, and that is the good shot. That's probably the best overall image. Same as the one of the motorbike I showed earlier. It's a good, even, the sharpness is about the same all over it. There's no excessive sharpening. Colors are very neutral. See, there's not really magenta up there, and it's, everything looks quite good here. It looks quite natural, the shadows and the walls and the fence. All the way to the edges. You see, if I go way down here, we can see their little dragonfly decoration there. There's a grill, there's a gas bottle. And we are way down in the corner here, of a big image. That's, that's a big image. So the 950, quite satisfactory. And if we go and look at this building here, we're starting to get brickwork that's actually horizontal and vertical, not diagonals. Although, I guess if you look at it the right way, it's going diagonals up there, in that area there. But hasn't got the gray line issue like the P30 had. So again, 950, great camera. Great camera. Up here, it's about as sharp as that P30 Pro 40 megapixel image up here. Yet it's only half the megapixels. And half the size, 5.5 megabytes for that image. Yeah, pretty good. Next image. This is the P30 at 10 megapixels, so it's the standard wide at 10. This is how you use it on daily use, is the 10 megapixels. See, the 40, I'll go on about that in a moment. Using the 40 is a different kettle of fish altogether. And so this is at 10. So it's using that 40 megapixel one and squishing it down, sort of super sampling the pixels and giving you this image. It's got an over-sharpened look to it, where everything sort of gets this kind of contrast, especially in the leaves. When you over-sharpen leaves, especially greenery, it loses all its color. I might demonstrate that. I'm going to demonstrate that. Let me take an image like, excuse me. Just got to find something suitable. Well, I want to find something that's not already sharpened up. But it's got to have that greenery in it. Oh, I can take one of the other images of the same stuff here. Right. Well, like that one. Okay. Let's go to that one on disk. Here it is. Okay. Open with Photoshop. I'm just going to demonstrate what happens with sharpening if it's applied to greenery, and it makes images look HDR'd, contrasty, but without a lot of black. So there's that image there. See all this greenery here in the background? And this doesn't look particularly sharp, and this is actually quite good, this image. And to explain how sharpening works, I remember I saw an image here earlier that was actually perfect. It was one of these. Yes, it was one of these. I'll find it. It was one of these in the won't be a second. Let's try that one as well. It's not the one I was referring to, but I can show it to you on that. So open with Photoshop as well. So this image here, let's bring that up. So down here, this is not over sharpened, this image. I don't know what camera this is, I've forgotten. But it's not over sharpened. So what sharpening, the way sharpening works, it doesn't sharpen anything. All it does is the algorithm, the program, looks for any contrasting edges in the image. So if you have something that's light color against something that's dark color, dark tone, light tone against a dark tone, and there's an edge. And when something is soft, the transition between the light and the dark area is soft. You know, just it's a gradient. It goes softly from one to the other. And so that happens over a distance. And so the idea with sharpening is that you want to take that gradient where it goes from the light color to the dark color slowly in a nice linear fashion, and you want to try and make it a sharp transition. And the way you do it is on that edge you increase the contrast. So instead of just being a gradient from light to dark, you go like that, so that it's you boost the whiteness, you boost the lightness on this side, and you make it darker on that side. So you make the contrast on that edge higher than in the rest of the area. It's called boosting the edge contrast, and that makes things appear to be sharper. Obviously, it's not adding any sharpness. It's just making the edges seem to be sharper because there's more contrast. Many of you know this. So let's say here, that white line down the pitch there, that has no sharpening on it. There's the white line, and it just goes from white into the green. There's no particular, no particular change in the contrast. It's just the white color and the green color. They just come up to each other like that. Now let's look. Let's pull up sharpening. Let me bring up the something we can adjust. Let me reset. Okay. Now is it going to give us an amount? Okay. There we go. Just like that. As you can see, what I've done here is you can see how instead of just having the white going into the green, it now goes into black and into the green. And if this white area was bigger, we'd also see that it was lighter. And perhaps that bit down there would actually do that. I can't move this around. Let's do that. Bring that up. I'm going to look at that bit, see how that's got a great big, that's too big. See how that's got a dark patch around it and a light patch in the middle. I'll turn off the sharpening. You see, all we're doing is increasing the contrast at the edge. That's what sharpening does. And so it makes the lines apparently sharper. But you can see what it also does is it increases contrast. Now, if your lines are far apart and you do it fairly subtly, those lines individually become sharper. But if you've got foliage, like a tree full of stuff, that's where it becomes really messy, because the sharpening, there's so many lines in the bushes here. There's so many lines that where is it going to sharpen? And it ends up sharpening, putting contrast all over the tree, just everywhere, just all over the place. And what happens is you lose the color in the tree. There's so much loss of, so much contrast enhancement with it going black and white in great detail. You lose the coloring in the tree. It starts to look like it's washed out. Let's just do that. Let's just have a look at this tree area here, see what happens. You see? Everything, you can see the whole image becomes contrast here. There. A lot of cameras look like that. If you want to spot a crappy camera, you just look at the hills. Look at these hillsides. And this is what always happens. You see this everywhere. Look at that hillside there, and then, boom. That's a perfect example right there of the edge sharpness. You can see how it's a certain level of light gray there and a dark blue-gray there. Light and blue. And it's got this little transition area there. And if we do this, boom, we still have the gray there, we still have the blue here, but at the edge now we've got a black line and a white line. There's your sharpening. And all the cameras do this, all the phones do it. And so what I'm pointing out is that quite a few of these images that I'm looking at here, they have a certain look because the camera is sharpening, not because of the choice of colors and contrast in the image or anything, but it's because the camera is sharpening things. And the one I'm referring to, we'd just gone from this image, which looked pretty nicely colored. That was the 950 XL, and we went to the P30 Pro 10 megapixel, and all of a sudden the color's gone And there's just this down here, you can see all of this, that kind of sharpening that I just showed you. And if it didn't have that, this area would actually regain its color and look like green leaves. But instead of looking like green leaves, it looks like all this black and white gravel. It's got this gravelly look to it. That's what's going on there. And so the sharpening actually makes the whole thing look sharper than it would otherwise, but it loses its sort of subtlety in the colors and so on. That was a very long-winded explanation of that, but it's a point I want to make. And that's what's happened here. Okay, P30. That's the 10 megapixel P30. And right next to it is another 40 megapixel. We had a 40 megapixel earlier from the P30. Let's look at this one. So this compares with that Lumia shot and the 1020 shot we saw, where you could actually see the brickwork quite well. Well, in the P30 camera, it's got that maze look again, which we saw earlier. And in particular here, on top of the house, the roof, you got those gray lines again going along the top. That's there. Oh yes, and there they are on the walls. So those gray lines have turned up again along the walls. They're not actually there, but they are in the P30 Pro. Relatively stable, this shot up here. We can see the crosses. That bit looks all right. So apart from those issues, it looks okay. Overall, it's not very sharp. Here we're getting smearing. Yeah, quite smeary. Possibly optical stabilization doing its thing again over here. Doesn't look very good. There's the 10, there's the 40. But if we go to that corner, there's that bottle, you know. It's a 40 megapixel image. It's all right. It's all right. Some areas here actually look really good. These plants up close here look really good. Yeah. As for those roofs, we're getting the corrugated, quite nice. That's fine. It's just funny and foggy and smeary up here in this upper left corner. This doesn't look very good. Okay, and we got those gray lines. What's next? Second, another shot of the same thing. I just did another one right after. It's exactly the same. Okay, that's fine. Alternative. Oh, well, there we go. I find the P30 would take multiple images quite often. You press it and it's going tick, tick, click, click. I never had that on the 950s or the Lumias because they have the camera button. Sorry, my nose is quite blocked now. But with the Androids, you're having to push that, you know, tap on the screen, and I really don't like that. So I get a lot of double images in that camera. Big issue with the camera that really bugged me. First day I got it. You think you're getting a 40 megapixel standard, a 20 megapixel wide, and then 8 megapixel tele. But 40 standard, 10 wide. And then you find out, well, you can't really use the 40 very often because it's a special mode you have to go into. You have to enable that, and when that's enabled, things don't work. You don't get digital stabilization, and you don't get a few things stop working, certain processes and so on, whatever. So it's a reduced functionality mode, and thinking, oh, well, I'll use it in pro mode and it'll be my special thing. You know, but, you know, having to keep going in and swapping it over, you don't know when you're going to use it, when you're not. So you end up using the 10 megapixel all the damn time. That's a bit off-putting. But it gets worse. You see, I came from the Lumias where the screens were 16 by 9 and the cameras were 16 by 9. All of the Lumias were like that. I did have an Android, little tiny crappy one, way back, Android 3 or so. But I didn't realize that when you got to an Android and operate the camera, and they always look like this, right? They've always got this bit here like this. And I thought, why are they doing that? You know, why is it always like that format? And it's the 4:3 format, which is like a 10:8 and so on. Why that? Why not 16:9? And then I was reading camera reviews, and then some would have, you know, 20:9 or 22:9 or 22:10, and just all these weird sizes. And I was like, I'd only just got used to 16:9 after my 35mm work. I then got used to 16:9 because it's YouTube, it's the videos, and it's the photos. And it was always too long for me, too panoramic, but I got used to it and I was happy with 16:9. Then I get these phones and it's back to 4:3. And I'm like, oh, I actually quite liked 16:9 for landscapes. It was nice. But of course you can change it, right? So, oh well, we'll go in and change it. Well, turns out when you change it, there we go. Where's the camera settings? They changed this and it's hard to find the, I can always find the video setting. Oh, where is it? It's out. Oh, where is it now? Is it in Pro? Aspect ratio. 4:3. Oh, this has changed again. You see, again it's changed. So when I got this phone, it had the 4:3. It had a 1:1. That's for Instagrammers or something. And it had 16:9, and it had full screen. And I see now it's just got the first two plus full screen. There's no 16:9. So now I can't even take 16:9. And full screen is, well, I don't know, some weird format that doesn't fit anything. Um, but it gives you the full screen display like that, which is quite nice. But I'd like a 16:9 mode, so because, you know, I'm shooting stuff to go in a video. That's, you know, where I'm going to be putting things. So that pissed me off, but it wasn't even that. It wasn't even the fact that I'd have to do this. The real problem is that the 4:3 is the full resolution image. When you switch to 16:9, so on the 4:3, it's filling out that CCD. And when you switch to 16:9, it doesn't then go into the corners there and fill it out. It's actually just cropping the top and bottom off. It's just a crop. So when you change it to this full screen, it's just cropping the top and bottom off the picture, including all those pixels that you thought you were going to get. So your 10 megapixel becomes like a 6 megapixel image. So there I was with my new P30 Pro, my super duper best camera ever, as all the reviewers said. And I was shooting photos at 16:9 that were basically the same as the old, whatever, the Lumia 800, I think, had that size of an image. 6 megapixel. Even my old D70 shot a 6 megapixel image. You know, I was like, oh, well, what's so great about this? What a step backwards when I thought I was going to have this amazing phone, high res. You know, I thought, oh, 40 megapixel 4:3, maybe I'll get, you know, something, still get 20 megapixel images, 16:9. Well, you don't. In the end, you get used to the 4:3, and now I'm shooting everything 4:3. It was another downer. I wasn't happy with that. Um, Especially the big loss of resolution, you know, to change those sizes. So anyhow, don't bother cropping your image. Just take the 4:3, and that's how you get the maximum amount out of a CCD. Because of course with the Lumias it was the other way around. I think if you changed, well, you didn't change the resolution. It was a 8, 9, 10 megapixel. The X950 was 20 megapixels at 16:9. You know, who knows? Maybe it was actually a 38 megapixel CCD, but they just cropped it to 16:9. Maybe. All right, let's carry on. We're in this now for nearly 2 hours, hour and 50 minutes. Next thing was to do with. I'm going to have to stop because I'm all blocked up here. I think I'll just show a few pictures that I've taken, just in general, about things I like. Because you've just listened to an hour and 50 of me bitching about this camera. Uh, Other stuff that I think is quite good. I'll just look at some photos in general. This is the 950. The 950 Lumia always took a nice photo. I liked it. I don't have comparisons for that, but that's what I would really want to picture. I don't know why I left that in here, but that's not a P30 shot. But really clean, really straight. And I look at the image and there's no garbage in it. There's just no garbage, no smearing, no funny color things. The sharpness is even all over the place, right? It's just even everywhere. It looks really good. No trouble with noise, and it's not dealing with noise by smearing anything out. Really nice. I like that a lot. Those are my favorite images. This is fun because that's the obviously the P30 on its 5 times telly. And I took quite a few shots of surfers and so on, and that was fun because it's right along the beach in town, and it's fun to get. Happy to get shots like this. A lot of photos of my bike, sorry, but this is what I was doing at the time. Still doing that. Happy to get shots like this, generally. I did quite like this shot, apart from the severe contrast. If I shot it again, I would turn off that color option and just make it flat. Here's back to the standard lens, super warm, and it's got that Instagram look again. But, you know, it's the standard on the P30 10 megapixel images. They look pretty good. They're the Instagram shots. I quite like them. Go in. It's good enough. I mean, that I could print that as a poster this big. It would look good. It would actually look good. Same thing. I like that I can get in, touch the screen, focus on specific things like that. I do find myself taking lots of photos, just tapping around, doing different things, just hoping that I'm going to get something that looks good. And usually I do. But it's a lot of photos I'm taking. It's not really targeted like you would if you had an SLR. You know you're getting the shot. With these phones, it's like, well, maybe I'll get the shot. We'll find out. It's like shooting film in the old days. You didn't know you get the shot until you got your negs back and it'd be like, ooh, I got one. I got a good one. This is the standard, I think. Yeah, that's the standard. Again, I quite like the way it works, the way it looks. Nice colors, nice. The way it falls off the focus there across the image from, it's focusing there, but it's quite nice the way it drops off, quite naturally almost. Yeah. These were the telly. Yeah, I did a bunch on, this is that same surfing beach. I did a bunch with the telly. It's too long. It's a bit too long, that 135 equivalent. I would really want it to be in 90 or so. It's a more comfortable lens for me. But it was fun. I had a good time taking photos. There were lots of different people walking past, and I captured those two boys in sync there together like that. Their action thing, and it's sort of like the bike's an action thing. I quite like that. So I was having some fun taking photos with this. Surfers walking past, sort of a 70s look to it, feel to it. It's the super wide. Nope, that's still the standard. Still the standard. We got some flaring, some fringing there with that funny bit up there, purpley bit. That's all right. Pretty good. That's 10 megapixel. This is the wide, the ultra wide. And so with the ultra wide, not with the saturated color, but again, it's a different color. It's not warm like the standard. But you can get right in and do some interesting things. It's really fun using these ultra wides. And they're 20 megapixel at 4x3. And yeah, pretty good. The standard again. Back to the standard. And again, you sit there, you tap on, I hold it there, tap on the screen onto the instrument panel there. That gets in focus, throws the rest out of focus really nicely. You know, afternoon light, I thought that looked really nice. And that's all nice and sharp in there. Perfect. Really happy with these shots. This is against the sun, of course, with the this now with the 5x optical, and that's at 5x, so it's sharp. It's good. You can see a bit of a flare coming in the tops. Just put that in so you can see what kind of flare you might get with an off-center, off-frame highlight like the sun. Yeah, this kind of thing is what you do 30 years before with a Spotmatic at the beach and a black and white film. You'd be happy to get that. So there's shades of that kind of look. These are that weird ultra wide with the saturation dropping the corners off so much, but even that has a look that can be sort of quite fun. That's that as well. I didn't mind some of these shots actually with the effect. The macro thing, the macro part, which is it uses the ultra wide as a macro, and that works pretty well, except it switches back and forth a bit like the way the telly switches between digital and glass to between two cameras at a certain distance. The macro does as well, and it does it automatically as well as manually, so you can go to the macro mode and it switches to the ultra wide and uses that, and so you're pretty damn close with that. But also, if you're just on the standard, if you get too close to something, it'll switch to that as well by itself, which is a bit goofy. It's always going back and forth. Either way, you can get nice close-ups. They look good. I'm quite happy with, that's a nice detail shot for me. These shots, happy with those. I was quite happy with this kind of thing. So what I'm getting at here is that, you can take photos of cars and flowers, things like that, things that have defined shapes, not textures like grass and leaves, which tend to get a bit crappy, but things that have sort of are almost artificial shapes, man-made shapes like gas tanks and metal and bodywork. Always works really well with a digital camera. Always looks good. It's the natural textures which are hard to reproduce, but a flower has a natural look, but it's, like roses actually do look good up close. I'm talking up close. They work well with this kind of camera. This kind of thing works well. I like it. This was I think it was the ultra wide. Yes, it has a nice little flare, starburst kind of look to it, which is quite neat. Some of these cameras you get like vertical or horizontal lines across your CCD or your sensor. This doesn't do that. It's got this quite nice sort of starburst. So I could see that there, and I thought, oh, we'll get that. Quite happy with that. Works quite well. I may have warmed that one up. Although I'm not seeing that I did. Standard lens. Good quality. Quite happy with that. Macro on the ground, it sort of works. See a little mushroom. And here it's too contrasty again. That problem with the saturation just wrecked it. Over here, I've already looked at those. I was just showing photos that I quite liked at the time. Lastly, let's look at what I've got here. I think these are the final things. Oh, this goes way back. I think I threw these in just for fun. Guess what this is? Yes, guess what this was? This was a very exciting phone to get. This was a very exciting phone to get. And I still have it in mint condition. The sensor, the digitizer, the screen failed. And while the phone was in perfect condition, and this was so long ago, I put it in its box, and that was the end of that. This is an HTC HD2. HD2? Yes, the HD2 HTC. That was that phone that, like the Lumia 950 XL, it's famous for people installing every operating system on it. just everything, Windows 95 to whatever the hell. Um, and that's what that phone was famous for. It was a really nice phone, beautiful design. I liked it, really nice. And it had Windows Mobile 6 or 6.5, which was an interesting operating system. And it just had the digitizer, so you swiped around. That was a fun phone. It was perhaps because it used the old Windows apps from those old app stores. I forget what they were called. There were a couple of sites that had thousands and thousands of apps you could get. Interesting phone, yeah. It wasn't my first phone. I had a Jammin, HTC Jammin before that, which was a little Windows Mobile 5. Oh, it's gone back. That phone was sort of too slow to do everything I wanted to do on it. Okay. That's the HTC HD2 of that scene that I photograph all the time. It's got all kinds of issues with color problems there. That red there on the field is not red. Obviously, there's nothing going on. You can barely make out the building, the church there on the hill that I usually point to. You can barely make it out. Can't read anything on the buildings. Does it tell us how long ago this was? 2011. 10 years ago. I would have thought it was more than that. It's only 10 years ago. Gosh, I've had a lot of phones in 10 years. Not as many as reviewers have, but for me. God, my nose. I'm just going to squirt something up my nose. Excuse me. I'm going to clear my nose with some Sudafed. See if that helps. It's this heater gets all dried up in here. I bought a humidifier thinking that that might help when the heater's on. It makes the room damp, but it doesn't help. So I'm not using it. This here is I think it's the Lumia 800. Yes, Nokia Lumia 800, 2012. So that was my next phone after the HTC. Windows Mobile 7 came out. That's that. It was greatly improved camera. I mean, much nicer image. Smearing, it had this beginning of this smearing effect. So in some areas like that, just ugh. Meanwhile, next door over here, it was actually all right. It looked okay, but then in some areas it just would smear out like that. There in particular. But here we can start to see the actual church back there. There it is. At 1:1, it's that big. And this is a 4:3. I think this is a 4:3. For some reason I thought that was 16:9, but I don't think it is. No, it isn't. Not at all. Okay, pretty straightforward image. This one. Now what happened here? 2012, something happened. And for some reason I got this little Android 3 or whatever it was, little cheap touch screen phone. I got it for fun because my wife got one to use, as I said, she was going to buy a little MP3 player, which was popular at the time, the little USB keys for work. And I said, well, for that, just if not much more, you can get this little Android. It's a phone. It'll play all your music. And you've got a phone, quite a cool phone that can go online and do whatever. And so she did get it, and I got one as well because they were very, very cheap. I think about $70. Our money, which is stuff all. And I made an assumption that you'd be able to just load music onto it, that there would be some app or just do whatever. No, I stuffed around with so many different apps trying to get something that would work. And all I wanted to do was make it act like a USB key. Just plug it in, have it transfer or synchronize the songs her playlists out of whatever, and then she could take it to work and use it. Hell no. Hell no. I stuffed around with the damn thing forever. Android was just garbage. Oh, I couldn't believe why anyone wanted it. You had to get into the phone, make folders in a special folder, and then in there, if you put music in, you could get a music player to play it. There was some work, there was some stuffing around. But I was used to the Windows mobile stuff, which was really good because it had a synchronizing thing on you. It just ran. And you just have your playlists or your music or whatever the hell you wanted, files, documents, everything, would just synchronize automatically. You have it in a cradle or plugged into USB, and it would deal with it. And here she was having to copy stuff around in folders, and it was just a mess. Anyway, I'm not here to bitch about that. So this is that phone. It's like a little 2 megapixel thing. I just threw it in there for a look. Obviously, there's nothing to see. It's actually not that far from the HD2 image. Here we go. Oh, this is a Nikon D70. This is my second digital cam, my third digital camera if I count my DV cam. Those little DV cams with little Sony tapes. I had one that would do like a 640 by 480 digital photo onto a little stick, and as well as the digital video. I ended up using that more, the camera part more than the video part, because I really enjoyed using taking digital stills with it, but they were very small. I think they're 640 by 800 actually, because the PAL DV was that 640 by 720 or something like that. It fit within that CCD. And then I got a Canon G5 compact camera, which I really liked, but it had a lot of the cameras, the digital stills were sort of like, they had a video look to them. It just wasn't very nice. And then the D70 came out, the Nikon. That was the first sort of affordable Nikon digital SLR. Still have it. Wasn't that great. It was nice Nikon and everything, and programs. It was quite cool, but the images were really flat and drab looking, like this. Well, that's that. I think there's about 6 megapixels. What does it say? That's at 36 millimeters. Can't see the resolution, but it's down here. It's only a 1.5 megabyte image. Can't see the bloody resolution. Not on there. Oh, there it is. 3000 by 2000. It's about 6 megapixels right there. Okay, let me just have a look here. We can start to see some more stuff there. I can even read what's on the building there. State, brother. We're cooking with gas here. See the cricketers on the field. I would have been pretty excited about that sharpness at the time. You can see the antenna over there on the hill. Pretty good, but really flat and drab. Low contrast, no real blacks. Moving right along. Oh, and then for some reason this is a P30. I think I put these in because I had shots of cable cars. I don't know why that was in. Maybe I didn't have a D71. And shots of the cable car over the years. In fact, it was going up and down today. That's a 40 megapixel. Yeah, that's a 40 megapixel image. There it is at 1:1, and you can see the church pretty well. You can see that thing. That building's changed its name. Still has brother on that. And the people on the pitch playing something, hockey or something, I don't know. And that's actually pretty good. See everyone in there. If I switch to the next image, that's the P30 at 10. So that's just a minute later, switching to the 10. And here it's doing that sharpening thing where you can see the foliage looks quite nice and green. And then when you switch to this one, it's overly sharpened and it's lost its color because it's got all this white and black edge sharpening going on like I demonstrated earlier. That's what's going on there. Yeah. Not very nice at 10. So again, the 40 actually looked quite nice and the 10 didn't. P30 40, another one at 10. Ugh. Same issue again. So much sharpening that the image is just ugly. And there we go. That's all those of the cable cars. I've got more of that taken for the comparison between the P30 and the Ultra Samsung, which I'll do sometime this week. I just wanted to get this video out of the way. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up. That's everything I can remember. Oh, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Let's close that. Let's look at, not that stuff, but somewhere in here, the last thing I was going to touch upon, which I didn't do just then because that program doesn't show me videos. Oh, I did a couple of videos before with the telephoto popping in and out. That's, I think, what I wanted to show. I'll just quickly check through here. There's a panorama, not really interesting. Nothing going on with that. Nothing there, nothing there. Videos. Now, what was I looking at here? Yes. 4K. So one thing new about the P30 Pro was that it could do 4K. But so could the 950, couldn't it? But at something like 15 FPS or something? What was the deal there? I can't actually remember now. Windows Phone, Windows Phone. Yes. 30 frames. Right, so I've got here a '60 FPS 1080p on the Windows Lumia 950 XL, a 30 FPS 4K video. And that was on the 950, which was a couple of years prior to the P30. And then this came out and it could do 4K 30 FPS. So it wasn't actually an upgrade, which was disappointing. And even worse, the Lumia could do it at 16:9, and I think this one could not. I think that was a situation. I can't remember if that was this issue. But that was something I could compare. Oh, I just saw that funny wobbling. Look for the seesaw. This is 1080, 60 FPS. Quite good color. Nice, but see how it's just going back? Oh, it's hopeless. Yeah. So it's fine in the middle, but if you look at the edges, it's seesawing around the place. Horrible. And then it goes like this. Oops. Yeah, so that's a very good example of that problem. Okay. That was 60 FPS 1080p. Let's look at the 4K. So it's nice and sharp for video. But again, here it's the seesaw. And I'm trying to hold it stable. It's nice. If you just had a straight shot with no movement, it'd be quite nice. Yeah. Not really working. Okay. Now, have I got the equivalent 1080s on the P30? Look how horrible that is. And I've shot it at 16:9. And I think this was the issue. If you shoot at 16:9, it's terrible. 60 FPS, I think it was 16:9 on the P30 Pro. Terrible. So that's not very good at all. not impressed with that. Not at all impressed with that. Bloody awful, actually. Better stabilization, obviously, on the P30. Definitely, it hasn't got that funny optical thing going on. Much better stabilization. Ugh. So, actually, neither of them are very good for different reasons. Okay, well, that's interesting, I think. We'll do the same now with the 4K. So here's the 4K Huawei, and let's do the 4K of the, well, let's look at full frame first. Much better color than it had at, now this is 30 FPS. And it's really got this jittery thing going on where the optical stabilization is just not there. I don't think it even has it at this resolution. There's some limitations. It loses the ability to do certain things. But it's there, 4K. That said, the Lumia also had 4K. Jiggling away. I think none of the reviewers noticed that because they were too busy going, ooh, like this, trying to show the stabilization working. Okay, so that's not very good. I'll just put that one there, that one there. So on the left, it's the Lumia. You can tell from all the jiggling. I mean, that's supposed to be stabilized. It's just not. It's just like crazy. And the other one here, it's actually pretty good. I mean, in this comparison, the P30 Pro looks pretty good. I think the colors are much more appealing on the Lumia. But yeah, the stabilization totally screws it over. Well, this video is still working. Yep, sure is. And I'm not sure what I was videoing here. There was some problem here. Oh, this was this thing. Okay. This used to happen very often on the P30. When I started videoing something, the stabilization just wouldn't work. And I could see it on screen. It was because it was reacting to every little movement of mine. It was jiggling, and it just wasn't doing anything. And that one's 4K. Maybe that was the issue there. At the 4K, it doesn't work. That's what I was pointing out. And here's the... see, these are both 4K. Yeah, there's no stabilization. That's the thing. I'm sitting here trying to be very stable as I go around. It's just jiggling all over the place. It's terrible. Terrible. Not really any use at all, actually, that footage. So, not much use. The new Ultra Galaxy thingy has 60 FPS at 4K, and it even has a 24 FPS 8K mode, which, I mean, I'll do a test of it, but it's probably not very good. Right, I think I can finally wrap this up now. So, if you made it this far, you've been doing very, very well. I may split this up. If I did, you'll have been clicking through multiple episodes. And again, if you got this far after all that, you're doing even better. I won't say like, subscribe, and all that because you probably already are subscribed. Okay, tomorrow I will work on the review or the comparison of the other two phones. I've got the images there. There's less of it. Should be a quicker video. Anyhow, thanks. I'm going to bed. Nose is clear. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.